There appears to be a priority crisis on Capitol Hill as Democrats defend giving billions more to Ukraine to defend its border as our southern border remains open, and blasted Republicans who didn't side with them on the funding bill that passed this weekend.
Some say, well, we have to deal with our border first. The Ukrainian-Russian border is our border. It's the border between depraved autocracy and freedom-loving people seeking our democratic way of life. Do we have a stake in that outcome? Yes. Undeniably, yes.
And some House Democrats celebrated the passage of the aid bill like this.
Okay. The House will be in order.
And chanting while waving small Ukrainian flags on the House floor. But the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, is furious, telling Fox News, quote, "We are beyond disappointed that the House would give aid to secure the borders of foreign countries, but give nothing to allow the Border Patrol to secure the safety of the United States. There is nothing more backwards." He says, "I wouldn't have expected even taxpayer dollars. They could have just given us policy, and that would have been enough." Joey.
Yeah, the thing about the Ukraine aid package that is kind of like the silent justification among D.C. is that a lot of that money is not going to Ukraine because it's going to supply munitions to replenish what we've given. They sell, the ones that talk about it, and most of them won't, they sell that as a positive, like, oh, well, if you don't want to fund Ukraine, you should want to fund us. But the truth there is that they have already given it to Ukraine. They've made us susceptible in doing it. They did it very quietly. And there's no one's going to make this a selling point because the Democrats won't do it because then their constituents get mad that they're funding defense. And for some reason, Democrats don't like to defend our country, as you see at the border. Republicans aren't going to do it because it shows their own complicity in making our country vulnerable. So when they're passing this bill, they're trying to rob Peter to pay Paul is what they're trying to do. This is money already spent, munitions already sent. Passing this bill today doesn't change the tide of the war today, but it does apparently replace the things we've already given away that we couldn't afford to give away. And I think, for me, I don't know what my opinion is on the Ukraine and our involvement. My opinion is you don't get to send me to war for 20 years and then tell me to keep paying for other wars without making it difficult on you. And I hope that that's where taxpayers and voters are.
It's an added demoralizing layer, Molly, to read our correspondent Bill Melugin sharing texts from Border Patrol agents. So disheartened, things just like we're screwed and it's over. It's done.
It's unbelievable, actually. The American people have been so clear that they want something done about our border. And everyone understands that Republicans only control one chamber, but they just kind of rolled over and got nothing. You had the Senate refuse to hold the trial for the Mayorkas impeachment, and the Speaker of the House just said, okay. They could have demanded remain in Mexico or another policy change in order to get some of what the Democrats wanted in terms of this Ukraine funding, and they just didn't. And it's a very serious problem for the American people. That guy talking about how our border is the Ukraine-Russia border, we know it's not, because if it were, we would see Mexican cartels like doing human trafficking and funneling fentanyl over the Ukrainian border, and they're not.
What is your analysis on that House that Molly just...
Yeah, so let me give some points from both sides. First, let's take a look at the questions that conservatives have. Why is there no border funding? Why, in fact, are they waving Ukrainian flags on the House floor? As House Speaker Mike Johnson said, there's one flag on the House floor. It should be the American one. Another question, why did Biden begin his State of the Union with Ukraine? Most people want an answer to inflation. Why is a Democratic congressional candidate in the 26th District of New York tweeting this? He's not the nominee yet, but he certainly is running. Tweeting, Slava Ukraine, die, MAGA, die, you lose. That is what he sent out. Yeah. Real questions there. On the other side, House Speaker Mike Johnson in a tough spot. He doesn't want to allow Russia to just redraw the map. I don't know the intelligence he saw. He said it was the only way to get aid to Israel to go through. And he says the Senate supplemental, we made better because we made this a loan. And there are certain checks and balances in place. So I understand the argument. Mike Johnson's in a tough spot. He's a great guy, and he does not deserve a motion to vacate.
All right. So they split the bills up into four. Mike Johnson did. And two were about Ukraine. One was about Israel, one and the Indo-Pacific. Two were about Ukraine. One of them was Ukraine solely, and the other was Ukraine along with potentially a ban on TikTok. You tell me what the priorities are. I think it's in the numbers. I think that if you fight for something and you really mean to fight for something, you take it to the mattresses. I'm not seeing that from either side for our own border, as Molly said. But if that border fails, the world gets hurt. I'm not saying that it won't. With Ukraine and Russia, of course, they're next to our allies. They want into NATO for our protection, too. But you know they can't win that war. We sat in military in focus. Not a general has told me that they can win that war, that we are at stalemate.
I'm sure Mike Johnson's a good guy. He's got a reputation of making a lot of promises and keeping none of them right now. So
his district loves him. I will say they do love him.
More Outnumbered in just a moment. Stay with us.